They say some moments never leave you. Not because they were loud or dramatic, but because they slid in quietly and changed something you didn't know could be touched. It's been 2 years. 2 years since that day. And I still think about it more than I care to admit. I used to wonder if I imagined it, if maybe I read too much into a look, or a word, or a silence that felt heavier than usual. But I didn't. He stood there, looking at me not like a boy, not like a child, but like a man who saw something in me I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. And I didn't say no. I didn't speak at all. I just let it happen. There's a kind of emptiness that builds up inside you when you go too long without being seen. Not noticed, seen. Like someone is looking past everything you pretend to be and actually catching sight of the ache you try to hide. That's what it felt like. And when it happened, when he asked me that question I never expected, I didn't stop him. I didn't stop myself. I let it unfold. Not out of passion. Not out of lust. But out of that quiet kind of desperation, the kind that comes from being touched gently in a world that's gone cold. Before you decide what you think of me, before you make up your mind about what kind of woman does something like that, just listen. Make sure you subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold so you won't miss our next story. Because I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. But here I am, and it starts with a surprising request. And the answer I never thought I'd give. I'm 38. Been married for 8 years. On paper, it looks steady. A good home, no scandals, no shouting matches. But silence can be just as loud as any fight. And our house has been silent for a long time. My husband works in finance, always on the move. New York 1 week, Dallas the next. Always flying somewhere, always just about to leave again. And even when he's home, he's not here. He comes in through the front door with his phone pressed to his ear, drops his suitcase by the stairs, gives me a distracted kiss on the cheek like a habit, and heads straight to his office. It's been years since he looked at me like I was anything more than part of the furniture. And maybe I stopped trying too. I did what I thought a good wife should do. Kept the house clean. Cooked the meals. Laughed at his jokes even when they didn't land. Smiled through the loneliness. But behind that smile, I was disappearing. Then came him. My stepson. 18 now. Tall. Calm. Watchful. He'd been living with his mother the past few years, but she'd remarried and wanted a fresh start. So he came to live with us. He arrived on a Tuesday. I remember that because I'd just pulled a casserole out of the oven, and I was still wearing my apron when I opened the door. He smiled, soft, a little shy, and said, "Hey." That's all it took. It wasn't the kind of smile that knocks you off your feet. It was the kind that sneaks into your chest and settles there before you even notice. He was polite. Helpful. Not overly talkative, but always listening. He had this way of paying attention, not just to words, but to pauses, to silences, to the things you don't say. And maybe that's what caught me off guard. Because my husband, he'd stopped hearing me a long time ago. Stopped seeing me. But this boy, this young man, he noticed. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was just glad someone was talking to me again. Laughing at my jokes. Asking how my day was. But then came the small things. Like how he'd linger in the kitchen while I cooked. Or how he'd help me unload groceries without being asked. How he'd compliment my cooking, not just with a quick, "It's good," but with a quiet, "You always make things feel like home." It started feeling warm again, like someone had cracked a window in a stuffy room. But I told myself it was innocent. That I was imagining it. That it was just the novelty of having someone around. I pushed those thoughts down. I buried them beneath chores and laundry and fake smiles. But deep inside, something had shifted. Something subtle. Something I didn't want to name. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. But I didn't want to. Because seeing them meant admitting something was missing. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. It was a Wednesday. One of those slow, quiet afternoons where the house feels almost too still. My husband had flown out early that morning for another conference, this time in Chicago. He barely said goodbye. The house always felt heavier after he left. Like the air thickened, or maybe I just noticed the silence more. Either way, I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, trying to fill the space with noise, knife against cutting board, the low hum of the fridge, the simmer of sauce on the stove. Then he walked in. My stepson. He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching me with that soft, unreadable expression he always wore. "Need help with anything?" he asked. I almost said no, out of habit more than anything. But instead, I said, "Sure. You can stir the sauce." He smiled, walked over, and took the spoon from my hand. Our fingers brushed. I told myself it was nothing. We moved around the kitchen easily, like we'd done it 100 times before, even though we hadn't. He chopped while I stirred. I teased him for being too slow, and he made a joke about me being a control freak. We laughed. Real laughter. The kind that bubbles up without warning and fills the space around you like sunlight. And for a moment, I forgot. I forgot about the distance, the silence, the aching parts of me I'd buried under years of routine. Then, I reached for the salt and knocked the pepper grinder straight into the pot. A plume of steam and coughing. He stepped back, laughing harder than before, eyes crinkling at the corners. "You trying to poison me already?" he said. I laughed too, covering my face with my hand, cheeks burning. He handed me a towel, and when I looked up, he was already looking at me. But not the way he used to. Not the way a boy looks at someone who married his father. It was different. His gaze lingered, just long enough to make my breath catch. Not inappropriate. Not blatant. But warm. Curious. Like he was seeing me, not just looking at me. I turned away too fast. Pretended to focus on wiping the counter. Said something stupid about starting over on the sauce. He didn't say anything, but I could feel the air had changed. After dinner, he cleared the table without being asked. I thanked him. He nodded and disappeared upstairs. I tried to distract myself, folded laundry, scrolled through messages from my husband that said things like "made it safe" and "busy all day tomorrow." Nothing more. I went to bed early. Pulled the covers up, turned off the lights, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the night. Then a knock at the door. Soft. 2 taps. I sat up. My heart did this strange thing, like it forgot how to beat normally. I stood, walked over, opened the door just a crack. He was there. Not trying to come in. Just standing in the dim hallway light, barefoot, hands in the pockets of his hoodie. I just wanted to say thank you for earlier. I missed this. Feeling seen. I didn't know what to say. I smiled. A small one. And he walked away before I could respond. I closed the door slowly. Locked it. Stood there for a moment, hand on the knob. Why was my heart still racing? Why did that simple sentence feel like a thread being pulled loose from everything I thought I had under control? I went back to bed. But sleep never came. Something had shifted. And I knew, no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I had felt it too. I told myself it was nothing. Just a thank you. Just a moment. Just a boy being kind to a woman who's been invisible for too long. That's what I kept saying. But the truth is, I kept replaying it. The softness in his voice. The way he said feeling seen like he meant it. Like it wasn't just about dinner or laughter or spilled pepper. Like it was about me. And no matter how much I tried to push it out of my mind, it stayed. It followed me into the kitchen the next morning. It echoed when I walked past his closed door. It slipped into my thoughts when I folded towels, when I stood at the sink, when I stared at my own reflection wondering if I still looked like someone worth noticing. That afternoon, my husband called. Usual check-in. Same script. How's the house? How's everything there? Did you pay the gas bill? His voice was flat. Tired. Distracted, like always. He didn't ask how I was. He hadn't in a long time. He said, "I'll be back late Friday. Don't wait up." And just like that, he was gone again. I stood there holding the phone long after the call ended. And I remember thinking, when was the last time he looked at me like he meant it? Not just glanced in my direction. Not just noticed I was there. But actually saw me? I couldn't remember. But I remembered my stepson's eyes the night before. I remembered the way he paused before he spoke, like he wanted to say more. The way he lingered. The quiet warmth. And I hated myself for thinking about it. For letting it live in my mind like it belonged there. What kind of woman notices her stepson's gaze like that? What kind of woman waits for footsteps in the hallway, hoping, just a little, that he'll knock again? I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That I was lonely, tired, vulnerable. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I couldn't sleep, those were the hours when truth is hardest to run from. Nights when I'd lay awake, staring at the empty space beside me in bed. Nights when I'd scroll through old messages, rereading words from years ago that felt warmer than the man who sent them now. I used to believe I was strong. I used to think I could survive on scraps of affection. That I didn't need to be held, or heard, or seen. But something changed. It wasn't the way he looked at me. It was the way I felt when he did. Alive. Not like someone's wife. Not like someone's stepmother. But like a woman again. And that scared me. Because I knew, if I let myself want that feeling, even for a second, everything I built could crack open. But deep down, some part of me had already stepped over the line. Even if I hadn't moved a muscle. Even if I hadn't said a word. The moment I let that feeling live inside me, something shifted. And no matter how hard I tried to pretend, I felt it. All of it. The days that followed felt different. Not in any big, obvious way, but in the quiet shifts, the way time stretched between glances. The way silences began to speak louder than words. We started spending more time together. Not planned, not forced. It just happened. He'd linger in the kitchen after meals. Ask if I needed help reaching something high on the shelf. Sit on the edge of the counter, legs swinging, just talking. But it was what he said that made something stir deeper. He told me about his mother. How she was always distracted. How she made him feel like a guest in his own home. How when she remarried, he didn't even get a say, just a new man in the house and no space to call his own. I used to think I was hard to love, he said one afternoon, his voice low, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. And I just stood there, holding a dish towel, trying to breathe through the ache in my chest. Because I knew that feeling too well. It was strange. How easily our conversations slipped from surface to soul. How I found myself opening up to him too, small things at first. Then the deeper cuts I never dared show anyone. One afternoon, I was reading by the window, the sun pouring in like soft honey. He walked in, holding a cup of tea. I made you this, he said. I looked up, surprised. He handed it to me. Our fingers touched. They stayed, longer than they needed to. We didn't speak. Just held the moment between us. And I felt my breath catch in my throat. That night, I stared at the ceiling again. Not from restlessness, but because my thoughts wouldn't let me go. His words. His eyes. His quiet warmth. The next day, he came into the living room where I was folding laundry. Paused. Then said, soft, almost unsure, "Can I draw you?" I laughed. Not mockingly, just caught off guard. "What?" I asked, half smiling. "I mean it," he said. "You have this stillness. This softness. I just want to capture it." Something in the way he said it, gentle, almost reverent, made the air around us feel heavier. I paused. And then I said yes. We set up in the dining room, where the afternoon light came in just right. He asked me to sit still. Said I didn't have to pose. "Just be how you are," he said. And I did. I sat there, in silence, feeling his eyes move over me in ways I'd forgotten people could look. Not like I was something to fix. Not like I was fading. But like I was here now, present, real. The only sound was the scratch of his pencil and the slow tick of the wall clock. I didn't speak. Didn't dare. Afraid even a breath would break the spell. When he finished, he turned the sketchpad around. And my breath caught. It wasn't perfect. But it was me. More me than I remembered being. "You look real," he said. "Like you haven't been seen in a long time." I didn't know what to say. My eyes stung, but I blinked it away. Just nodded. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't loneliness keeping me up. It was the rush of feeling. Feeling like I mattered. Feeling like someone saw something in me. Something worth capturing. Something worth remembering. And just when I started to drift, a sound. A soft knock. 2 gentle taps on my door. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I just laid there. Heart pounding. Breath shallow. Torn between wanting to open that door and praying he would walk away. Because deep down, I knew what it would mean if I let him in. It was a Friday night. The sky had turned heavy all afternoon, thick clouds rolling in like a warning, wind pressing against the windows, sharp and unsettled. By evening, the rain had started. Slow at first, then faster. Louder. The kind that drowns out your thoughts and fills the house with a restless hum. I lit a few candles just in case. Our neighborhood was known for losing power when the storms got too loud. And sure enough, right as I was rinsing a cup in the sink, everything went black. The hum of the fridge, the soft light overhead, gone. I froze. Storms always made me uneasy. Something about the darkness. The sudden quiet. The way the world seemed to vanish outside your windows. I reached for my phone to use as a flashlight. Before I could turn it on, I heard a voice behind me. "You okay?" I turned. He stood at the doorway, one hand against the frame, his face lit only by the soft flicker of a candle on the table. I nodded, just startled. He stepped in slowly. I brought some candles from my room. He placed them on the kitchen counter, careful and quiet. The flames flickered between us, casting warm shadows on the walls. The power was out. The house was silent except for the storm outside. And yet, inside, something louder was building. I tried to act normal. Tried to say something light. "I guess we'll have to rough it like pioneers tonight," I joked. But even I could hear the tremble in my voice. He sat down across from me at the small breakfast table. I joined him. We didn't speak for a while. Just listened to the wind, the distant roll of thunder, the occasional creak of the house adjusting to the pressure. The candlelight danced between us. Soft, gentle, too honest. And then he spoke. "You don't have to pretend you're okay." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They hit like lightning. Not outside. Inside me. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. His face, calm, open, not asking for anything. Not expecting anything. Just there. And suddenly I felt it. The tightness in my chest. The weight I'd been carrying for years. The ache of being strong for too long. I looked away, but it was too late. The tear had already slipped down my cheek. And I said it. "I'm tired of pretending." My voice cracked as it came out. But I didn't take it back. He reached across the table. Our hands touched again. But this time, neither of us moved. We didn't pull away. His thumb brushed gently across the back of my hand. Slow. Intentional. There was no rush. No force. Just 2 people sitting in the dark, finally saying the things they'd been too afraid to admit out loud. The storm raged outside. But inside, everything was still. We stayed like that, silent, connected, until the candles burned lower and the power flickered back on. But even when the lights returned, we didn't let go. And in that moment, I knew. It was just a moment. But it changed everything. The next morning, the house felt different. Not visibly, nothing was out of place. But something in the air had shifted. I woke up early, made coffee like I always did, wandered through the motions, hoping the familiarity would settle something in me. But it didn't. The chair he usually sat in at breakfast, empty. No footsteps coming down the stairs. No casual greeting. I waited. listening for any sign of movement upstairs. But the silence pressed in thick, like it had weight. When I finally saw him, just for a second, crossing the hallway, he didn't look at me, didn't say anything. His shoulders were tense, his head low, like he was carrying something too heavy for his age. I almost said his name, almost asked if he wanted to talk. But I didn't. I didn't know what words to use, what version of the truth we were supposed to hold on to now. So I let him walk past, and I stood there, feeling a different kind of alone. That afternoon, my husband came home, dropped his bag by the door, just like always, gave me a distracted kiss on the cheek, muttered something about delays and airport food. I nodded, smiled where I was supposed to. He didn't notice anything was different. Didn't see the way my hands shook when I poured his coffee. Didn't feel the way the air had gone colder between walls that were used to silence. That evening at dinner, it was the three of us. But it might as well have been strangers. My husband scrolled through his phone between bites. My stepson stared at his plate, barely touching his food. And I listened to the sound of forks on porcelain and silence between breaths. No one said much. Just the occasional forced comment about the weather or some show we weren't really watching. But underneath it all, I could feel it. The weight. The memory of candlelight. Of hands that didn't let go. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Not once. And I couldn't tell if it was guilt or regret. Or something worse, disgust. I asked myself 100 questions in that hour. Did I misread everything? Did I push something he wasn't ready for? Did I ruin him? The shame crept in, quiet and sharp, like needles pressing against my skin. After dinner, he went straight upstairs. Closed the door gently, but firmly. My husband stayed up watching TV. I sat on the staircase in the dark, one step from everything and nowhere at all. We didn't speak of it. Not once. But everything had shifted. Later that night, I went to my room. Closed the door behind me. Tried to breathe through the chaos in my chest. That's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper on my nightstand. My name written on the front in handwriting I knew too well. I picked it up. Opened it slowly. Just one sentence. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made that request. No signature. No explanation. Just that. And I sat there, holding that note like it might burn a hole through my fingers. Because I didn't know what hurt more, that he regretted it, or that part of me didn't. I kept the letter, folded neatly, tucked in the drawer beside my bed like a wound I wasn't ready to clean, just keep close. And most nights, when the house was quiet, when the dishes were done, the lights were off, and my husband was already asleep beside me with his back turned like always, I'd take it out.